Welcome to Stay Sharp in Digital Engineering, your key to unlocking success and the digital evolution of products and manufacturing. In this episode, Jonathan Scott and I team up with sustainability expert Jos Voskuil to explore sustainability's pivotal role in PLM and digital engineering. We dive into evolving regulations, digital twins, product as a service model, and how PLM tools drive measurable environmental impact. Join us to unpack the future of sustainable manufacturing. Let's go. Welcome to Stay Sharp, everyone, the podcast about all things digital-related products, engineering, manufacturing, and beyond. I'm one of your hosts, Julianne Grant, and I am joined today by my co-host, Jonathan Scott.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Jonathan. Always great to be here with you. Another good conversation planned today. So today we're talking about sustainability as it relates to product development and how that is showing up and needs to show up in the PLM and digital engineering world. If the term sustainability feels vague, and I know it does to me, it's okay because it is an evolving area. But the good news is we're talking about things today with an expert who knows a little bit about this. And he'll be talking about tracking energy usage, water usage, material and substance compliance, and other things like that. And how we're going to use product development tools to help actually do that. So for our conversation today, we're really pleased to have a guest with us. I'd like to welcome Jos Voskuil. I hope I did all right,
Yeah, thank you, Julian. Perfect pronunciation. Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you. So Jos is a very well-known name in PLM and is the co-founder of the PLM Green Global Alliance. Jos is also known as the Virtual Dutchman from his blog, the http://www.virtualdutchman.com, and has been working for more than 20 years in the world of PDM and PLM in a very unique role. So he interfaces between all stakeholders involved in PLM engagement. Jos is a coach and a business consultant with a focus on mid-market companies. But thanks to his blogs and lectures, he's also got a much bigger reach into larger enterprises. So since 2014, Jos has been focusing on how to explain digital transformation in the PLM domain. And thank you, Jos, because that is not an easy thing to do.
Right.
Certainly changing every moment here. But he's also helped coordinate and connect many users and companies since 2020 and is actively combined sustainability as a driver for digitalization. So Jos assists in PLM implementations and companies in establishing a vision, a compelling story, and has stepped up the approach to sustainable PLM. So that's quite a background, Jos. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, Julian, for the introduction. And yes, it's a pleasure to be here and share with you, the enthusiasm for both PLM and sustainability. I think both important topics in our business.
So glad to have you here, Jos. I know we've known each other for more than a decade. I don't even remember exactly how long.
We became smart in the early days. Huh?
That's right. That's right. But anyway, great to have you here. So with that, I want to dig in, right? Like Julianne mentioned a minute ago, sustainability can be, kind of a vague topic or at least amorphous to people. So when I think about it, I think we're talking about a lot of subtopics, all connected by the need to make better use of the resources that go into our products. That to me is a common theme, but like raw materials usage of, say, water as an example, or energy, minerals, chemicals, all those kinds of things. And I think another thing that comes to my mind is CO2 equivalents or carbon dioxide equivalents, because the concern, the connection there to the raw material usage is, usage of our planet and temperature of our planet, and that those tied together directly. So anyway, I wanted to just give a little bit of that background to our audience about the what are we talking about so that we can get into a little bit of the why. And, why are we doing something? Why is the topic coming up now? And, without any politics, right? This isn't meant to be anything about political discussions about temperature or any of that. But it's like, okay, resources are finite. We all know it. So why is this coming up now? So let me start there. I want to dig in with a question, up front, Jos. What are some of the examples of sustainability initiatives that are bringing this up, forcing some action right now from product makers that are making this an issue?
So before going into the examples, because I think the examples are driven by regulations, I want to come back to Julian and your point on sustainability. In general, sustainability has always been there. It's the term where you say we want to make sure that we can continue our business, a sustainable business. And sustainability has been always economically driven. But now we see that also the planet has its borders. So we have to consider the way we build products, the way we design products in order to be sustainable in our business. And it looks very much like what we think about PLM also. PLM started in a narrow scope as an engineering tool, but we also there discovered it has a much broader impact. It's much more complex because it has to do with business, both product design, but also products in life. And you should consider sustainability as a layer across the whole enterprise. Okay. And when do you start to feel this layer? It's the moment that it becomes regulated. And and I
that
think
gets right to the driver, yes. Right?
Yeah. I mean, before, also in PLM, it was product quality and cost and time to market that was driving PLM. And now we see with sustainability, what is driving sustainability? First of all, the regulations that we say, okay, we want to know what you're doing. So you have to start reporting on how your products impact the environment. It could be carbon emissions, but it could be also hazardous materials usage. And a lot of companies said, we don't know, we guess. Yeah. And then the regulations came, the early ones that said from RoHS and REACH that said which materials are you using, which are the hazardous materials are you using. And more companies are forced, I would say, to analyze and report what they are doing. And especially in the context of sustainability is the carbon emissions that their products either cause during manufacturing, during operations, but also which materials are inside those products. So, I think it starts because there are regulations and there are limits.
And it sounds like that's changed a little bit over time, right? To your point, the first ones that I became aware of, years ago were those hazardous material regulations, right? And that's what prompted people to need to do something. But to your point, now that's evolving into other types of reporting and regulations that are, I guess, more relevant or added to the relevancy.
Well, if I look at the early days of hazardous materials, the RoHS and REACH, it could be done with PDFs. You send a PDF to the supplier, tell me which components, hazardous components are in your materials. It was a very small part of the business that was really doing this. And you could do it, I would say, a little bit manual. And I think still a lot of companies do it manually. You could add it to your bill of materials as properties and then add up all the hazardous. But that's already the advanced step. A lot of companies still do it separate as part of the verification because it was electronics products. It was only a certain amount of products and they just had to verify that they were safe. But then, especially with the European Green Deal, there came so much more regulations that if you want to sell to the European market, you need to be much more aware of your impact of your products. Reporting standards came. The Green Deal also talks about the digital product passport, and we might zoom in on that. And those regulations are touching the full business. It's not that you can have a guy at the side that is calculating the materials from the past. No, it needs to be part of your design process and your delivery process and your reporting process and even your financial processes.
Yeah, it's interesting that's like the analogy you just drew a minute ago about the evolution of it, sort of like the evolution of PLM from PDM, right? It's like you're looking at this scope, but then you realize you need to answer for a broader scope. So you have to sort of grow it into all parts because it's not just what's in the product, but maybe how you got there and how you shipped it and how you service it and all the things. So that's interesting.
Yeah, right.
One of the things that you mentioned that I think is relevant, really relevant, is that at first, it only affected certain industries. And I wonder about that from a market perspective today, too, because I know in the US, I hear about this in certain industries, but not as widespread as I hear about it in Europe. From your perspective, the sustainability topic, do you see it as, is it a global topic? Is it moving at the same speed in the different markets? What's going on there?
Well, to speak for a global manner, I'm still also curious what's happening in the Asian countries. I mean, in our PLM Green Alliance, we have a lot of people from Europe and from the US participating in the discussions. But from Asia, the countries there, we have a lot of, I would say, consumers of the information, maybe also because they are more on the manufacturing side, and the design is done in the West, or it comes from there. That might be a quick and dirty answer. But from the other hand, we see that in particular in the European Union, we have a lot of new regulations that come and say, okay, if you want to sell to the European market, you have to be compliant. We need to know what is in your product, how they are made, and you have to report their carbon emissions. Not with penalties yet. It's all about visibility, so that also both organizations can make a change and consumers can make a choice on what to do.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. So at this point, some of what's coming is still sort of market driven, not regulatory driven. Like, it's not that you have to have your product be a certain way, but it's saying, well, you have to report on it so consumers can decide, so the market can choose, and maybe that moves things. That's interesting.
Yeah. And that's still the question. Would you pay more for a greener product even if you know that it's greener? Would you still pay for it?
Yeah, well, it is. That's going to be a big question, right, for lots of people. But
and it makes me comes to mind is we're starting to see sustainability statements on RFPs and things like that, and you hear companies about minimizing carbon footprint and going to making commitments around that. But where does a manufacturing company really start with that? Is it to me it sounds like, oh well, you got to. You mentioned the materials earlier, and that really makes a lot of sense. You got weight, you got how long is it going to last, but it just seems like a big undertaking for a manufacturing company.
Exactly, and I think the first thing is start measuring what you do, and for that also the reporting on carbon emissions during your manufacturing process. This you can do through your energy bills. You know what you're doing, and if you have, I would say, an overusage, or if you can improve some areas by different energy sources, that's already a first step. Have a clue how your end-to-end process, I would say, is data-driven working. And there comes the love for me from PLM. Finally, we need also data-driven PLM. To understand what is happening and where are your sweet spots, because you don't have to change immediately the way you design your products, but at least you know which are the areas where I can have the first, most important impact. And then the next step comes, indeed, look at your portfolio. Where can we improve? Where can we change? And it could be material choices, as you say, but another big part of the regulations in Europe is the right to repair. I mean, that means that your products need to be repairable, serviceable, and that's also extending the lifetime of products. And that has impact on your design, of course, if you need to make repairable products.
That's an interesting one, and a big debate in the U.S. as well. I shouldn't say big. I don't know how many people are paying attention to it from an engineering perspective. I definitely pay attention. And it's related to agriculture here. Big discussion between the farmers and the people making farm equipment about right to repair. And that's really interesting when you think about sustainability and, whose product is it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe interesting to mention, I have here, it's called a Fairphone. It's upgradable, it's modular. And it's a Dutch product, but I'm now concerned about, can they make a business? Mm-hmm. Because how do they, the last 4 years, I haven't bought anything from them.
Right. Yeah. So it's a green idea, right? Yeah. But to your point, can they sustain themselves to be around for it? Yeah.
Or they need to have a booming customer audience base. And that's, of course, the challenge with the right to repair. If you make your products repairable, your agricultural products for 30 years or longer, where is your business going? And there we have an answer, by the way. But that's the next step, if you're ready for it.
Okay. So what is the next step?
Well, the next step is what also the European Union at the end is promoting is more to product as a service or a product service system. That means the manufacturer is also owning the equipment, and the farmers would use it, they would pay for usage. And then you see that for the manufacturer, it's much more beneficial to have a repairable product, because every time delivering a new one is much more expensive. Make it repairable, make it modular so they can upgrade and increase the value. And the whole concepts of circular economy fit very nicely in the product service system. And that is a business change. And that will take more time, of course. But
that's a huge one, right? I think we spend a fair amount of time talking to customers today about how PLM, digital thread, all these digital enabling technologies are things you have to have if you're thinking about making that shift from product to product as a service. And it's a big leap, right? But I get the connection there.
Yeah. And as an analogy, I look at how we went in the PLM business from selling software with no limited licenses. Then we went to perpetual license, software as a service. Also there you see the challenge companies have in transforming their business.
Right.
But the good news is that in theory, the end user benefits, because they always get the up-to-date best service, and the company has to be customer-oriented in order to help this business flourish. You can't have an R&D that is just pushing everything to the market. Now they have to listen to the customers, and they need to put the inputs of the customers back into their products.
It's interesting. It comes back to your example of the Fairphone, right? Which is like, I when you mentioned that, I thought, one of the things that we see in the U.S., and I don't know that global phone contracts are like this, but in the U.S., they'll have this $1,000 phone, this very expensive phone that they want you to buy, but they just find a way to finance it for you, right? And I wonder how much finance is going to play a role in all of this. That, to your point, a company that maybe is more sustainable but can't make a go out of it because they make something that it doesn't need repair for often enough, so they don't have a good ongoing business. Will finance help connect to this to help some of it?
Yeah. And here I've seen some examples from Germany where you have finance companies that purchase the products. It's like a lease car, actually, similar. They purchase them, they do the finance, they do the leasing, but they are in close contact with the manufacturer for repair and upgrades. And based on that, they have their margin in providing products as a service to their customers. And it's even in industrial equipment, so it's coming.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? And I guess we've seen the model already. As soon as you said that, it made me think of aircraft, right? Exactly. In the U.S., all the airlines don't own the aircraft; they lease them, and there's someone in the middle between Boeing and Airbus and the airline. That's interesting.
Yeah, in the early days, we had GE Finance in order to ensure that there was you could buy the GE products.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, we could get deeper into that. I'm gonna shift us a little bit though. I want to go on to what is it that needs to enable all of this in the PDM and PLM world, or digital engineering in general, right? Because it's not all just about the management of the data, but some places it's probably about generation of the data. But can you give us some practical examples? Because I know at the Global Green Alliance, you guys look at some of what tool providers are offering. What are they introducing? That sort of thing. But maybe some use cases, examples of tools, things like that. How does this get down to actual work that engineers are doing in these tools to support these needs?
Right. So first of all, I think if you want to really analyze what your products do in your design phase, you need to move to virtual product development. You need to have a good understanding of your virtual product. And this is where I think model-based system engineering should be the foundation of all future product development. You should have models related to your product, not only, I would say, a 3D CAD model, but also behavior models, simulation models. And that's the first step, because those models are still estimates. And you only know how those models works if you also can compare them to what happens in the field. And then you can tune your models and they become realistic. And one of the big examples I've seen from a printer, a copier manufacturer, who has their machines, they have they have models how they should behave, and when they leave the factory, they have the characteristics of the machine available as a baseline. And then when there is something happening at the customer side, they compare the data that comes from the printer in live, and they compare it with the model they have, and then they say, okay, the differences are in this area, in the ink area. And since many things of the printer are closed, you cannot just go in and fix them. They know where to look, which model is it, and then comes modular, which module should we then replace. So the model is really the collection of models is really the way to look at a modern business, connecting both the field and the design. This company doesn't have a PLM system, but they have an infrastructure of connected systems and transferring data from one to the other. And as they use a model-based approach and data-driven, I mean, it's not looking for files and drawings and et cetera to share and jump over or throw over the wall.
That's interesting. So the example you're giving there, right, is somebody who, I'm going to put words in your mouth and you tell me if this is right. Okay. They're not necessarily using PLM as a system, but maybe PLM as some processes and more of a digital thread, connecting information they need, but they're still taking the approach that they need to sort of have model-based or data-driven information.
Exactly, and that's the whole discussion we have in PLM. We want to go to a federated environment of connected systems and models to enable a digital thread, to enable digital continuity. And I think the biggest challenge are the big vendors, because they say, no, the digital thread is just in our system. And
everyone wants
the digital
to own
thread's
it.
Inside of my walled garden,
That's
right?
Yeah. Well, this brings to mind we've been talking about digital twins for a few episodes, Jonathan, on our other series, and I just wonder in this scenario, does that model represent the twin in some sort of format, or am I off base there?
I think digital twin also is a concept, but there are multiple digital twins, I think, in an enterprise, depending on your target use case. And I've once saw the Boeing Diamond from Don Farr. I don't know if you've ever seen this one.
Yeah, like the Systems Engineering V, but the diamond on top. Yeah.
Which really shows the parallel between the virtual world and the physical world. And for every, I would say, or the physical world, but between every virtual and physical step, there is a model or a use case. It could be a manufacturing virtual twin. It could be a design virtual twin. It could be an operational virtual twin. And then, as I'm a little bit misformed also by all the Dassault language, the Dassault virtual twin is encompassing everything, because it has the 3D.
Yes,
but
it does.
the digital twins is can be anywhere, I would say, in the V happening.
I think that makes sense, right? And depending on what you need and what part you're studying, you might need a different looking one to give you the model information that you need. And
to have a complete virtual twin in the Dassault context is very ambitious. I think a digital twin is a first step to get there. And if you can combine them also with 3D representation, yes, then you are already much further. But
so
first get it done.
Yeah. I want to come back to the practical things and ask sort of a very specific question, not to dig into any one vendor, but who's out there making tools that are focused on the sustainability topic, and what are they doing? What are these tools giving people specifically?
So what you see is that a lot of the sustainability tools come as add-ons on the existing PLM infrastructure. In the Green Alliance, we talk with MakerSite and with A Priori as two, I would say, traditional also vendors of software, but they added the sustainability dimension, the measurement, and also the prediction and optimization of how can you be more sustainable in their calculations. So now they call it also AI, because it's with algorithms and with data. But they really
you can't have a product without AI today, right?
Exactly. So, but really, they extract the traditional PLM data and they combine it with environmental data and databases. And one of the databases that we see the most is EcoInvent. I don't know if you heard about them. It's a database
I'm sorry,
that
could you
has
repeat that?
EcoInvent.
Okay,
It has,
thank you.
I would say, a lot of data about manufacturing processes, material usage. So it's a kind of generic library with this library connecting to your product design, you can have an estimate of your environmental impact.
Okay.
And
like if I'm machining a part and it's going to take this long to machine, it's going to use this much energy and this much cooling water, like that kind of thing?
But also I'm using steel with this quality. What is the environmental impact of this quality of steel?
Okay.
And then we haven't talked about supply chain yet, but this is the next step. And with this database, you can have at least an impression when you design a product, what is the environmental impact? And of course, the reality is when you start measuring your own products and calculate, but you have a first guess. And the methodology around, I would say, analyzing the environmental impact is often called LCA, life cycle analysis or life cycle assessment, which should be integrated also in the design process of modern digital enterprises. You can't do it with documents, and then it's too slow, it takes too much time.
And that process, if I understand it correctly, and this is not my area of expertise, but like you said, life cycle assessment, it's sort of very analogous to like the PLM, product lifecycle piece, which is, okay, for your product, for all the constituent parts, from the beginning through the end, what does it take for water or carbon or minerals or whatever it might be that you're tracking? But you're looking at the whole thing. And like carbon is a great example where you're saying, okay, don't just think about what energy went into making the steel, but then the steel was made in a certain country and had to be shipped to another country. So there's more carbon in that step. But it's looking at the whole picture, right?
Yeah, and we try to make it comparable by calculating in carbon equivalents. Because they are not all the same, but you need to have a kind of baseline. And I think we will get better and better in that.
So it's sort of like a currency, so to speak, a way to measure. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
interesting.
The baselines get calculated in this EcoInvent product, or?
You use the data to create your own product baseline.
Okay.
And with the database from EcoInvent, also you see, okay, here I have my sweet spots. Here I can improve without big significant changes because the product still has to function. It still has to be there. And that's the big challenge. How much time do you get as an engineer to do those analyses?
That's a good question.
And I think you get a lot of time if you work in a digital environment where you can run simulations as a batch instead of building prototypes and reading documents.
That's interesting. So that there's the connection you're making there is it's the sustainability topic, right? The ability to create more data, manage more data comes along for the ride as you digitalize, right? So as you move to a more digital product development world, guess what? The incremental cost of tracking one more thing, right? So if you're going to track, strength, things about the design that you would track today, and maybe product cost, product weight. Well, guess what? Carbon equivalent or water usage or energy, those, it's just one more attribute. That's kind of what you're getting at?
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I started to frame digital transformation in PLM as moving from coordinated to connected in 2014, I said a lot of people agreed, but the business kept on going on the old way. Let's still do documents because that's where we feel safe and it's a new way. And then came the sustainability angle as an additional driver. And I was very happy with that because it's both for the business and also for the PLM infrastructure crucial that we move from documents to data. And they are, I would say, increasing the speed of digitalization thanks to sustainability.
I wonder how well, this is the concept's been around a while, but how well have the PLM vendors in particular adapted to including capabilities around sustainability in their software? Are we seeing a trend in that direction?
I think, like always, the vendors are always ahead. And so they have their lifecycle analysis databases, or like PTC with Granta, they have this material databases, material properties. So the capabilities are there, but you can do good and bad things with PLM software. I mean, that's always the big challenge. And
isn't that the truth?
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at, we spoke with Sistera, that is a platform based on Mendix from Siemens.
Okay.
They help actually companies to build a kind of sustainability reporting platform connecting to PLM sources, and that could be Siemens, but it could be any PLM system, and most of the time Excels and calculations to bring it into a reporting environment.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess the vendors are probably taking different approaches, like you just mentioned. That's a third party using an existing platform that could be connected to multiples. And I imagine the other ones, I did do a little bit of research before we started talking today just to see what do some of the vendors have. And like you said, they've got a lot of capabilities. I don't always see it front and center on their messaging, but for those who need it, they have some capabilities here.
Exactly. And a little bit disappointing if you go to the board level, sustainability is not a hot topic there. It's always first finance and analyzing risks, what is happening. The risk of not being sustainable.
Right. Well, to your point, it's like the Fairphone example and the idea of what do people pay attention to, right? It's, well, first stay in business and then be sustainable. And it sort of comes in that priority order. And
in the Green Alliance, we spoke in the past with a chief sustainability officer who gave her first speech in the company that said, "These are my plans," etc. And then the CFO said, "But lady, we have to make money."
And it's all going to come around to accountability at some point.
Yeah,
At what point that we actually hold companies more accountable.
Yeah.
Which comes full circle in our conversation, right? Back to regulation. Right now, a lot of it's reporting, but as it becomes regulation, then maybe it looks differently from the perspective of cost.
Yeah, at least regulations create also an equal playing field. And that's the idea. Huh? We don't do it by nature.
Only when we have to.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah. It's a little bit like in the Netherlands, if you look at smoking. I mean, we know smoking is not good, but only when there were regulations, you cannot smoke anymore inside a pub. Then people start, okay, not anymore in the pub. There was some complaints about it. Then not anymore outside on the terrace. And still we know smoking is bad.
Right. And yet there are people still smoking.
Exactly.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So we heard a lot of things today, and this has been an interesting conversation because I'm not as exposed to sustainability I mean, we've looked at it, and even as an organization at Razor Leaf, we looked at some of the things that we need to be paying attention to, even as a software company and a services company. So, and I think there's always a little bit more question as a services company where that all fits in, but we still get those questions on RFPs about, what is your sustainability position and what are you doing? So I think, the takeaways are for me today is that, companies do need to pay attention to this. And I think it's going to become even a bigger issue. I think Europe is leading the way. I think Europe is, especially around the compliance issues, that's also what I'm reading about. But I think, in the United States, as we're starting to, as the plans from, not to be political, but are trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States, that this is going to become a much bigger issue for us.
Yeah, I think even if you bring your manufacturing back to the US and you want to sell to Europe, you have to be compliant.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And we've talked about doing a whole episode on compliance, I think, Jonathan, because I think there's a whole thing to unpack there. But back to some of the sustainability aspects. So companies can really get started by taking a more serious approach around digitalization and how they develop and how they design and develop their products. And so if you're not taking active steps towards a digital process and how you develop products, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble because it's going to be harder to baseline the products that you're developing.
Exactly, you have to start measuring instead of just guessing.
You need to measure instead of guess. Absolutely, and that's something I can relate to as well. As we've had other conversations here recently. And that companies know that there are capabilities out there, but you don't need a PLM system. It sounded like you had a good use case where, you can develop more around your process as long as you have the digitalization, the digital capabilities to do that.
Yeah, maybe to correct you, I think the advantage still of a PLM system is that it brings a lot of data in context together. Because if you would do it by a collection of small systems, you would be maybe spend too much time on IT issues instead of having the benefits of a bigger system. But don't think about the single system. It's a federated platform. Yeah,
Fair enough. And that, really driving towards getting data to flow across the company. So there's a digital thread or some traceability, and to consider employing some model-based systems engineering practices that could help really develop those core models for companies that want to start moving towards a better way to measure their business, their products, and their effectivity of that. How did I do? That's about what I came up with.
Yeah.
Sounded pretty good to me.
All right.
Yeah, I'm glad you summarize it like this because, as if you're in the middle of the business, you sometimes forget that you have to explain it simple. And that's also one of the biggest challenges in our world. We have to be storytellers to make people motivated, not by making them afraid of what is happening, but about what they can do, about the opportunity.
Right.
Yeah, and I would agree. There probably is a big, if I was organizing or in charge of a large manufacturing company, might be a little daunted by the concern about how to meet all the aspects of sustainability. And I think, your point about just start measuring is really the key step one. Just, don't get overwhelmed. Just start taking a piece of the process and start measuring and see where you can move from there. So,
yeah. I'll tell you what I heard in that, right? And sort of my parting thought on all this, it echoes exactly what you said, Julianne, which is where this is headed. We can all see where it's headed. First, you track it, then you have to report it, and then you maybe regulate it on it for where you want to sell or where you operate or whatever it might be. But the trick is start now before you have to, because once you have to, it could be a lot more expensive to get it done quickly. But if you start with estimates, track what you know, improve what you can, you're going to be on the journey so that as the steps come to you, you're ready for them instead of having to react.
And maybe an interesting observation in that when we started with the PLM Green Alliance, talking with vendors, we started with SAP. And you would say, that what is the PLM vendor doing with SAP? But the SAP is good in measuring the manufacturing process, the dating. So they are very transactional, and they are the first one that can say, okay, this is your environmental impact in your manufacturing process, and follow up your supply chain. And there in the interview also, I think we discussed that still 80% of the environmental impact is defined in design, in engineering. So, but your SAP system or your ERP system is a great source of measuring first. I mean, don't forget it. It's not only PLM that needs to do the job.
That's true. That's a good point. All right, gentlemen. Well, I think we are going to attempt to wrap up. This has been a very interesting and enlightening conversation. So I want to thank you, Jos, for participating with us today.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. We'd love to keep the door open and have you back for another episode, if that would be okay.
Yes, I think the beauty is we are currently on the move. And not so fast as we hope, maybe, but there is for sure progress every year when you look back.
Indeed. Anything else from you, Jonathan?
No, it's been great. I mean, Jos, thank you for sort of bringing the background, bringing the information to the audience. So I appreciate it. Always good to talk to you, but yes. It was good educational topic today.
Yes, it was. And I'm really glad you were here with us today. As always, there are a lot more angles that we can go down for sustainability. And as you're saying, Jos, that it's an evolving area. So for manufacturers out there, just make sure it's a consideration at this point if you haven't really been looking at it in your process. Well, we welcome anyone's comments or questions. If you have anything for Jos, please send us an email at podcast@razorleaf.com or just shoot us a comment on our post. Give us a like if you like this conversation. And we thank you for your moments with us today. And we appreciate you listening into our episodes. So we hope everyone enjoyed this conversation. And until next time, stay sharp.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here and listening to this episode of Stay Sharp with Razor Leaf. If you like this podcast, please be sure to hit the like button. We really appreciate that. And subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform or check out our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, please be sure to leave a comment or send us an email at podcast@razorleaf.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay sharp.